In the Aristotelian or Thomistic view of things, goodness is bound up with a thing's function or purpose or telos. Teleology is part of the account of goodness that Aquinas or Aristotle would give, right? Recall Aristotle's claim in the function argument that the good and the well reside in the function. To understand what it is for something to be good, you've got to understand its function, its purpose, its goal, its end. And so goodness and teleology are merged together in the thought of both Aquinas and Aristotle. Well, the scientific revolution kind of repudiates teleology. And so what are we going to say about the good then? If goodness was simply performing your purpose, fulfilling your end, performing your function well, right? If that's what goodness was in this teleological scheme, well, if we get rid of that teleological scheme, what are we going to say goodness is? What is good in the world? What is our account of what is good? So this is a problem that Locke is left with, because Locke doesn't want to have anything to do with teleology. And so he's got to give a different account of what is good. And in the readings that we have from the essay concerning human understanding, that's exactly what Locke does, right? If it's not going to be performing your function well, right? If good is not going to be identical to performing your function well or fulfilling your purpose or something like that, because we've gotten rid of all that, well, what else could it be? Locke goes for pleasure. Locke is a hedonist. That word, so often enough when you use that word in English, hedonist, if you describe somebody as a hedonist, it has a negative connotation. It's a way of describing, saying that somebody is self-indulgent or gluttonous or, is something like that. In philosophical contexts, it doesn't have those negative connotations. Hedonism is a philosophical theory. It's a theory about what is good, right? So Aristotle is not a hedonist because Aristotle does not think that pleasure is the good. Hedonists think pleasure is the good. Locke is a hedonist. He's not the only one. Lots of people have been. Mill is one. We'll talk about Mill later. But Locke wants to say that all and only pleasure is good. All pleasure is good. Only pleasure is good. So any pleasure you can experience, that's good. Only pleasure is good. So that's to say that pleasure is the source of all goodness. Anything else that you might call good is good because it's related to pleasure in some way or another. Health is good because health helps produce more pleasure. Something like that would be the idea that a hedonist has. Locke is a hedonist. The way he states it, it's going to be important for our purposes. So what he says is that, well, what's good? Well, pleasure, or that which increases or causes pleasure. Kind of by extension, we can call those things good. If something increases or causes pleasure, we can call it good. And evil then is just pain. And by extension, we can call anything that increases or causes pain evil, right? So this is Locke stating hedonism. This is the way Locke puts it. What's good? Pleasure. Or, things that cause pleasure. So, when you're eating a piece of candy, yeah, that's good. I love it. Pleasure. That pleasure is good. But Locke could also say, well, the candy too, you can say is good because it increases or causes pleasure. You get, shot, I don't know, whatever. You got a bullet hole in your shoulder. That pain that you feel is evil, is bad. That's what's bad. But by extension, you could say, well, what caused it? The gun or the bullet being shot, you could also call that evil or bad, right? Because it caused the pain. That's Locke's view. So that's what we're going to reach for when we're giving an account of the good. And Locke is going to take this idea and apply it to happiness. And when he does this, right, give an account of happiness, he's going to give a hedonistic account of happiness. In Locke's view, happiness consists in pleasure. So Locke gives a view of happiness that is much closer to the view that we would probably give had we never read Aristotle, right? When you just think of happiness in the way we tend to use the word, oh, yeah, eating vanilla ice cream makes me happy, or whatever it might be. When we use that word and we say things like that, what we're using is a concept that's much closer to what Locke is saying. That's kind of what Locke wants to say. Happiness just consists in pleasure. That's it. The implications of this, according to Locke, what he says is that inquiry into the summum bonum is pointless, is a vain task. What on earth does that mean? What is he even talking about? What does that mean? What he's doing when he says something like this is he's attacking, or criticizing, I should say, Thomas and Aristotle and everybody like them. Because Thomas and Aristotle and everybody like them, they thought the point of ethics was, in some sense or other, to figure out what the highest good is. This is particularly clear in the case of Aristotle, right? That's the whole point of the whole project in Nicomachean Ethics, was to figure out the highest good. And then he says, the highest good has got to be happiness, and happiness is virtuous rational activity, blah, 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 blah. All that stuff is his account of the highest good. Locke uses the Latin phrase for highest good here. That's what summum bonum is. It's just the Latin phrase for highest good. He says, so and when he says inquiry into summum bonum is pointless, he's saying inquiry into the highest good is pointless. The kind of thing that Aristotle did, pointless, vain task, not worthwhile. You wasted your time, Aristotle. Why? Because there's no one thing that makes everybody happy. What makes me happy, and Locke goes through a bunch of examples like this. It might be the case that, I'm happy when I'm, what's my vision of happiness? It's having, a 3-car garage and, I don't know, where are the nice suburbs in Chicago? I don't Winnetka. I think that's a real wealthy place. I might be, I don't know. Only been here a couple of years. I want a 3-car garage over in Winnetka, say, and I want to have the ideal American, like 2.5 kids and whatever, right? That's the ideal number of children, sociology or whatever. I don't know. And so on, and make I don't know, $1 million a year, whatever. That's my happiness. That's what I like. Well, fine, Locke would say, that's happiness for you. That would make you happy. That would please you. Great. Knock yourself out. Go for it. Other people, by contrast, they might, what's one of Locke's examples? They might take pleasure in debauchery, luxury and debauchery. I think he says something like that, right? Kind of licentiousness, debauchery, right? Just, letting themselves go and just having at it. Food, sex, drink, everything. You're just going for it and just doing it to the utmost, right? For some people, that's what they want to do. And Locke says, yeah, for them, I guess that's what happiness is, right? That's what makes them happy. And then another example that Locke gives, I think, is pretty good. Talks about, and other people, they like hawking and hunting. So hawking, from what I gather, is something that, kind of well-to-do English people would do. They, you'd have a hawk, right? And you get the glove and everything, and the hawk would go hunt little animals or something and then bring them back to you. And that was like hunting, right? Seems like a kind of lazy way of hunting. The hawk is doing all the work. But anyways, some people take pleasure in that. That's what they want to do. They want to go hawk all day long, and that's what makes them happy, right? And other people, they want to go live an ascetic life. They want to go sell all their possessions and live off water and bread and live in a hut in the desert. And, well, that's what makes them happy, right? There's no one thing that makes everybody happy. Aristotle seemed to think that doing philosophy would make everyone happy, contemplating this life of contemplation. Maybe that makes you happy, Aristotle, but that doesn't make anybody else happy, really, right? And so that's happiness for you, but not other people, Locke would want to say. There's no single highest good for everybody. That's why doing the kind of thing that Aristotle was doing, trying to figure out what the highest good for everybody was, pointless. That's Locke's idea. Now, is this a good argument against Aristotle? We're not going to worry about it so much. It does look question begging, I would say, however, right? He's assuming in this argument against Aristotle that happiness is already pleasure, right? He's assuming already that happiness is pleasure. And since there's no one thing that pleases everybody, well, there's no one thing that makes everybody happy. And so looking for one thing that makes everybody happy is pointless. That's Locke's argument. But I think what Aristotle would likely say in reply is that pleasure is not what the human good is. That's not what happiness consists in. Happiness actually consists in something else. It consists in virtuous rational activity. And that is some one single kind of thing, at least. It doesn't mean everybody needs to live exactly the same life, but everybody needs to have virtuous rational activity in their life if they want to be happy, if they want to live a good life. And Locke, in your argument against me, Aristotle, you assume that happiness is pleasure. Well, I would get off the train right there, right? I think you're wrong about that. And then that's where our disagreement would be. So this is a kind of statement of Locke's disagreement with Aristotle, though I don't think Aristotle would find the argument against him particularly compelling.